So, good morning, folks. Thursday morning, February 15th. We're going to hear from a few people in regards to H81, right to repair bill. And so we'll introduce ourselves and then we'll get started.
Brian Collmore representing the Rutland District.
Irene Renner, the North, including Fairfax.
Brian Campion, Bennington County District.
And requirements from Memorial County, who should be along shortly. And I'm Bobby Starr from Orleans County. So I'd like to welcome you folks to the committee, and going to be dealing with H81, right to repair. And Dana, I think you have another engagement, so we're going to let you lead off with this morning with your testimony.
Terrific. Thank you. Good morning, Senator Starr, Senator Collmore, Senator Campion, others. Appreciate the opportunity to be before you this morning. I apologize I couldn't be there in person. I was in the State House yesterday, but had to head back to Maine. And as Senator Starr alluded to, I also need to testify on a timber trespass in the House Judiciary Committee. So I'm double booked this morning. So I appreciate your indulgence and letting me go first. So Senator Starr, Senator Collmore, members of the Senate Committee on Agriculture. My name is Dana Duran. I'm Executive Director of the Professional Logging Contractors of the Northeast. The PLC is a trade association that represents logging and associated trucking contractors throughout the Northeast, including here in the state of Vermont. As background, PLC is a trade association that was created in 1995 to represent logging and associated trucking contractors throughout the state of Maine. And in May 2023, we expanded and we now represent 20 timber harvesting contractors in the state of Vermont. And we have 3 board members, including Sam Lincoln from Lincoln Farm Timber Harvesting and Randolph Center, Jack Bell, Longview Forest in Heartland, and Gabe Russo, Southwind Forestry from Pollitt. And as I mentioned, we've also accepted about 17 other contractor members since early October. I think this is the first opportunity I've had to present to the Senate Agricultural Committee. And again, I deeply appreciate the hospitality and the invitation to speak. So I appear before you today on behalf of our membership from the PLC in the state of Vermont to testify in qualified support of H81, an act relating to fair repair of agricultural equipment. I provided my written testimony to the clerk this morning, so you should all have a copy of it, and I'll run down through that now. Our organization was not involved in the formulation of this legislation in 2023, nor were we involved in the dispensation in the House of Representatives. With that in mind, we have provided our opinion on similar legislation in the state of Maine, which I actually have attached to my testimony for you to take a look at. And the bill in the state legislature in Maine is actually going through the process currently. So we feel qualified to provide similar testimony here in Vermont. I did testify on the legislation in Maine in the spring of 23. I would like to state at the outset that the issue that this bill is trying to solve is not a state-based issue in reality, and it likely deserves attention at a national level. Thus, ultimately, it is our opinion that Congress should take up issues like this as they involve interstate commerce and really should be settled at the federal level in the end. State-based action could be challenged if they create one-off solutions that put states at odds with one another. I see something like this could occur if this bill does move forward as written. And if one of our members from the state of Vermont who operates in multiple states, which does occur quite often in this industry, if a Vermont-based contractor works in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, or New York, what would happen if a machine breaks down while they are working in one of those states? Would Vermont law still govern from this perspective, or would it be handled from state to state? I will not go further into this issue for now because that's not what you asked me to testify, but I did want to highlight it for your consideration. With that in mind, the bill before you would empower our members and loggers in the state to make faster and less expensive repairs to the machines they use every day. The machines they use to support the forest economy and provide meaningful employment to hundreds of individuals in some of the most rural areas of the state. It would accomplish this by requiring original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, to make all the necessary tools, parts, manuals, and diagnostic equipment needed to perform repairs available to loggers and the independent repair shops that they use. We believe that this is important, but we do not believe it should be done for free, nor should it put the safety of individuals and/or warranties at risk. We do not represent OEMs on this issue, but our members do have a lot in common, as both loggers and equipment manufacturers are in business at the end of the day to make a profit. OEMs, like contractors, are not ATM machines, and they should not be expected to give their intellectual property away without compensation and control. We live in a capitalistic economy, and a free market is critical to its success. A free market with the ability to achieve upward mobility relies upon investment, creativity, and taking risk with the opportunity for reward. Without this fundamental underpinning, it would put business investment at risk for fear that this type of ingenuity could be undermined, removing the incentive to be in business in the first place. From our perspective, as long as the contractor that purchases the equipment can also purchase necessary tools, parts, manuals, diagnostic equipment, and necessary training to troubleshoot and repair their own equipment, keeping in mind warranty and other legal requirements, we believe that this should satisfy our membership in terms of the issues that this legislation intends to correct. However, there must be an understanding that not all repairs nor diagnostics can be done safely by anyone who can turn a wrench. These are complex machines with complex electronics. Some of the systems in the machines have chemicals in them that require special training and certifications to handle. Some of these chemicals have been mandated for use by Congress, such as diesel exhaust fluid in Tier 4 engines, and not everyone is certified to work on some of these systems because of consumer protection and chemical safe handling law. Providing everyone who can pay unlimited access does not necessarily ensure safety and does not ensure success. Therefore, please be cognizant that a one-size-fits-all approach is not necessarily so cut and dry. As I mentioned before, we are providing qualified support for the legislation and for the concept. If the bill does move forward from this committee, it is our perspective that Section 4052, subsection number 3B through C, should be removed. We do not believe that the government should determine what is fair in terms of the provision, distribution, sale, or pricing of intellectual property, unless it defies current antitrust law in Vermont and or the United States. From our perspective, this section goes a little bit too far in terms of dictating terms of independent business relationships and markets. In closing, we believe this is a potential solution, but it might need further deliberation, potentially at the federal level, to ensure it helps those in need, but does not create a law of unintended consequences. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide the opinion of our membership, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dana. That section 4052, what part of that was in question?
So, yeah, good question, Senator Starr. So if you refer to the bill, and I'm just referring to the bill as it was presented from the House, so it has the red-lined language in it. I'm looking at a version that's on your website on page 23. So if you move down through section 4052, it gets into terms, limitations, dictating what is fair price, how information would be transferred to independent repairers, documentation. I believe Vermont already has a section of law. In fact, it's referenced in the bill, which is section 4053, enforcement, and then the power the Attorney General has to determine violations of price fixing, etc. So I think that's already in statute. But I just think that this section I referenced within 4052, subsection 3, letters B and C, from our perspective, just goes too far in terms of dictating independent business relationships.
Brian?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Dana. I appreciate this. I think one of the things that you brought up that I hadn't considered is the safety component. And if you could just say a little bit more about that, because it sounds like if it were to move forward, people could be risking their safety as well as perhaps others if things aren't performed at the level that they need to be.
Yeah, appreciate the question. So, Congress, and I'll give you an example. So in 2014, Congress, and many would question their infinite wisdom, required the use of what are called Tier 4 engines in all industrial equipment, and that includes over-the-road heavy-duty trucks. So essentially, any equipment that uses diesel, that is wheel-based or track-based, has to have a Tier 4 engine. So a Tier 4 engine has to be 99% particulate free. To achieve that, it involves the injection of something called diesel exhaust fluid, DEF. So it's a clear liquid that effectively mitigates any particulate matter being emitted through the stack of any of that equipment. That's highly advanced, it's a chemical. And so to handle that chemical, you have to have special training, you have to have special certification. In order to go in and repair that, you've got to deal not only with electronics, but you also have to deal potentially with that liquid. You also have on mechanized equipment, fire safe, fire retardant, fire suppression systems now, and those also have chemicals in them. So, to handle those chemicals, again, you have to have special training. You also have to have special certifications. So some of this is being mandated by the federal government. And so you have to be careful about how far, technicians are allowed to go and whether you can repair them. And so it does create safety issues, and it also presents potential problems with warranties and et cetera. So there just has to be a balance between what is required by law, how you handle certain things, and then you don't want to put the consumer in a place where they're dealing with things that they generally shouldn't be. And then again, it puts their safety at risk, but it also puts their warranties at risk. And again, those warranties are critical between the contractor who buys the equipment and the dealer and the manufacturer.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Claire.
No, well, Irene, no.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Dana, for being with us this morning. Appreciate it. And so we'll excuse you so you can go to your next meeting.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Nice to see you. Hope to see you in person probably next week.
Yeah,
Thanks, Dan.
All right. Have a good day.
so. Yeah, those, what he was talking about, those heat boxes to burn that particular.
Yeah.
You get 5,000 degrees in temperature.
Really?
Oh, yeah. On the big truck,
Yeah.
they're tucked over in under the passenger side step to get up in the truck. Never any snow on that step. No. So Jesse, you're right on time. You came early even.
If you're not early or late, that's what I say.
Yeah,
It's right here.
Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you.
Got a good comfortable chair for you there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and you give us your name, where you're from. and-
Yeah. Well, I'm Jesse Backdorf. I'm a freshman at U32 High School, and I live just about 10 minutes from here in Berlin.
Oh,
And I would like to thank the committee for inviting me to come here and give my thoughts on this issue that is really important to me and has been important to me for a few years now. My background is in computer repair. I've been fixing phones, computers, laptops, everything since I was like 10 or 11. And since then, I noticed the fundamental issue of, wow, this part is really expensive. And they don't want me to do this because they know they can charge me twice as much. And yeah, I mean, so I have an example right here. These are my AirPods. I got a wicked deal for them, $175. They're broken. I called Apple a week ago. They say, hey, that's gonna be $230 to repair. They cost $250 new. And I see this issue is also incredibly apparent in farming equipment. I mean, I have friends at my school who are farmers and I've talked to them about it and they say it's a major issue. I want this issue to be mitigated as soon as possible and hopefully on a national level, but at least I can have it on a state level at some point.
Yeah, the bill that we have doesn't involve other
Yes,
smaller products, but
yes,
I believe that at one point in time that I know in Oregon, in other states, they've got right to repair on everything.
yeah,
And, but our bill here in Vermont deals basically with farm equipment, big equipment.
yeah. So the way these bills came about is I emailed my state representative, Ann Donahue.
Yeah,
And she had both Bill 79, H 79, and this bill H 81, and I introduced 79 last March. And yeah,
that takes care of this, that's
So-
the small stuff.
so 81 is the separate for agriculture, as you know, and 79 is for pretty much everything else.
Yeah,
Posters,
I
everything.
haven't seen some.
I haven't seen 79 either.
No, what?
Is it stuck on a wall somewhere?
I think so, yeah, in the House Commerce.
Yeah, so that's still over there. So you do repair yourself?
Pardon?
You do repairs to
Yes.
small things?
Yeah, small things, computers, everything, tablets, iPhones. If there's an issue, I wanna try to solve it.
Yeah,
That's my mindset.
and how are you making out with that?
Well, I made some money doing it. which is the goal. I fixed things for family friends. I've flipped things and sold them on eBay. I've been able to buy like 15-year-old laptops and I put some extra parts in there and then I sell them for a wicked profit. It's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
We need more entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you ever had any that blew up on you?
Well,
That went south?
I mean, definitely went south. I've never encountered flames, thankfully.
Okay.
That's yeah, it's been a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause I know, well, the previous speaker said that could get into trouble with some of these big rigs with the fluids and the
Right.
gases and.
Yeah, I haven't worked on any of those yet. I'm saying I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah.
But-
Right.
Thanks, Richard. So what got you into this? What do you hope to do after high school?
Well, after high school, I certainly have an engineering path that I can bring it forward to.
That's great. So you really love the engineering.
I like the engineering side of this. What's kind of got me into it is I would have my mother had this old Mac laptop that ran horribly. So I'm like 8 years old. How about I just take this thing apart and see how it works? I broke it, but
But you learned.
I learned how it worked. I'm like, ooh, I like this. Yeah,
That's great.
And I started being net positive in my repairing.
That's great.
Yeah, well, you remind me of myself. When we've always had big equipment, big trucks, and we had a transmission that was acting up, and so I told my uncle, I said, well, heck, I can take that apart and fix it. I think and he was pretty good about letting me learn the hard way.
How old were you?
I was probably 22. I spent 3 weeks trying to get the train, after I put the new gear in, it's 3 weeks trying to get it to turn. Take it apart, put it back together, turn it a quarter of a turn, and lock up. And I had 3 counter shafts in here. Well, I mean, I don't know how many times I took that apart. And all heavy stuff, put it back together. Finally, I basically gave up and I said, well, I've got to call Mack Trucks and find out what I'm doing wrong. Well, it seems that those gears were timed. And if you didn't time it when you put it together, it wouldn't make a full circle. And I mean, I should have called them at the end of the first week, but I said, no, if they can do it, I can do it. And, no, it takes a lot of learning to, little education to get to. So you've been doing this quite a while already.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's fun. I mean, and from my understanding, these tractors and things have computers built into them now, and there's like software locks and everything. I think that's just absurd. I mean, because I understand having a computer. I'm a big fan of tech of the future, but this tech of the future is making it so people can't fix their stuff because they don't want you to fix it because they're like, oh, we can make an artificial lock that does absolutely nothing if you try to fix it, which it just grinds my gears. I hate it.
yeah.
What's the most complex thing you've fixed, would you say?
Okay. I mean, I worked on the guitar amps before.
Really?
Yeah, and like these huge desktops, like all-in-one computers that like have a chance of having broken glass flying at you if you
Well,
mess up. Yeah, they're crazy.
Yeah, other
great.
questions?
No, just, yeah, I'm happy to hear that you understand the free market system. And you obviously have some acumen with regard to the legislative process too. You know, your other bill is locked in a committee or it's somewhere else. And yeah, refreshing to
Give
yeah, it's great.
Anything else?
Tell Ann Donahue she better watch it or else you're gonna run against her.
oh,
Yeah.
Right. Maybe a few years
yeah,
after engineering school.
right, of course.
It'll be-
Right, yeah.
Great testimony.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really well done.
Coming
Thanks for
in.
coming in.
Thank you.
It's Zachary on, still,
Over here.
oh, okay. Morning, Zachary.
Good morning. I do have a couple slides, so I'll join the Zoom here. Give me a screen share, great. Good morning. For the record, my name is Zach Tominelli. I am the Consumer Protection Advocate for VPIRG, the Vermont Public Interest Research Group. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for having us in on H81. I want to state at the outset, I am not a farmer. I am not a logger. I do not work with this equipment. So VPIRG's interest and support for this bill just comes purely from the fact that we think right to repair is good consumer protection policy. We just fundamentally believe that if you buy and own a piece of equipment, a product, whatever it may be, that you should have the ability to fix that and should have access to the parts, tools, and information necessary to fix that within some reason. And we'll talk a little bit about, what's, kind of reasonable there. But that's, what we fundamentally believe to be true. So we support right to repair across, a broad range of, consumer products. But to the extent that the legislature is, choosing to focus on a particular area, there are very good reasons to focus particularly on agricultural and forestry equipment. And in some ways, the modern sort of right to repair movement originated with farmers because, depending on how you trace these things, because they really do need repairs to happen timely, cost effectively, Don't get me wrong, I also would love, to have right to repair for my phone, for electronics. But if my phone goes down for a period of time, there are problems with that, but not nearly the problems that occur if, a farmer's piece of equipment goes down for a week or 2 weeks or something like that. So there's good reason why to, focus particularly on that and why, this movement in some ways, started with farmers. So I think I may have testified in this committee when there was an agricultural right to repair bill in the last biennium. So, this has, come up. And when we were talking then, this was a growing movement, but no states had actually moved forward on this. Vermont would have been the first. There's questioning, do you want to be the first, that sort of thing. This is changing very, very rapidly. States are rapidly moving forward on this. I think you've heard this, but just wanted to know California, New York, and Minnesota, they've enacted right to repair for certain different consumer products in the past 2 years. And Colorado, which is most illustrative here, they enacted right to repair for powered wheelchairs in 2022, and then agricultural equipment, a bill almost identical, very, very similar to the legislation you're considering. They enacted that in 2023. It went into effect January 1 of this year. Interesting thing about that bill and how that came to be, they enacted the right to repair for powered wheelchairs. It has the same framework that you're considering here, that the manufacturer has to provide on fair and reasonable terms the parts, tools, and information necessary. And the way that they basically then added agricultural equipment in their statute, it was fair repair for powered wheelchairs. They said fair repair for powered wheelchairs and agricultural equipment, and they added that definition and used that same framework, right? So that happened in Colorado, and these are just the states that have enacted legislation. A lot of states are considering this. A lot of them have passed it maybe out of one body in their legislature. West Virginia, for instance, last year, their Senate passed an agricultural right to repair bill that is nearly identical to, again, what you are considering here. They ran out of time in the House, so they adjourned. I believe the way their session works, they're now starting over, but they've reintroduced, again, this agricultural repair bill in West Virginia. So other states are moving forward on this. Another important point to consider here too, in every one of these states, all these that have passed it, these bills have had either some measure, and in most cases, a wide measure of bipartisan, or in states that have multiple parties, multi-partisan support. This is not, right to repair is not a Democrat issue or a Republican issue. It really comes down to, do you fundamentally believe that people, if they own a product, they should be able to fix that product? And you can look at the votes, even the vote, in the House, in this very, state House was, sort of a wide margin. I believe it was 137-2. And just in terms of, what people are hearing and what they're saying. So in Colorado, when the bill passed the House there, again, it did ultimately get enacted. Rep. Ron Weinberg, Republican from Loveland, he was a co-sponsor of that agricultural right to repair bill. This is what he said. He said, I'm talking to my constituents out in rural areas, and they're telling me they're buying third-party illegal software from Russia, trying to fix their own machines. That is a problem. It is time we pass something to help the ag community. So that was, some of the rationale there, and some of the worry. And this is an important thing to kind of keep in mind as we talk about a couple of the key components here, the key issues that are coming up with regard to things like safety, emissions, which are important. And I want to talk about that. So that's just kind of setting the stage for where the nation is on this, where other states are moving forward. I'm not going to go through like the entire bill, but I do want to there's sort of 5 points of emphasis here that I just want to focus on with it. So the first is that ultimately this is about giving farmers and loggers more repair options. What do I mean by that? This is, I think, really important, because when we get talking about this, I think and I mean all of us, this happens, me, we kind of automatically jump to a hypothetical where we're thinking right to repair means encouragement to repair, or compelling to repair. The idea that, like, we say if we pass this bill, we're imagining farmers hopping under these very expensive, very complicated machines and immediately tinkering and fixing their own things tomorrow. That is actually not what this is about. When we say giving more options, we are saying having the ability, access to the parts, tools, and information to do that. So here in the state of Vermont, from what we understand, testimony that we've heard, having talked to people, I can't say that this is necessarily true across the nation, but here in Vermont, we understand that our farmers and loggers are generally very happy with the dealers and authorized repair techs in this state. They find them to be reliable, trustworthy, all that sort of stuff. So it's important to keep in mind that if you pass this bill, nothing in this bill says you have to stop using your authorized repair tech or your dealer to do these repairs. So if you have, somebody, you're based somewhere and you have somebody, the authorized dealer that you're using out of Williston maybe, and they're coming and they're doing the repairs and they do right by you and you pass this, you're gonna still probably, my guess is keep calling them for repairs and keep, working with that individual. So when we say this is about getting options though, the point is right now, the way the situation is let's say, even if you're happy with them, you call them up and you say, oh, my machine went down. I need to make this repair. I literally can't make it because I might have the parts. I might have, some of the tools. I might even have somebody on my farm who's a former repair tech who knows how to do all this and they can put it all together. But I can't do it because I don't have access to this diagnostic computer that basically both diagnoses it and also then when you've made the repair, tells the machine the repair has been made, it's safe and go back. So I literally can't do this. So I call up the authorized repair tech and I say, hey, can you come do this? They say, well, we can't get out for 2 weeks. Well, can I buy the computer so that way? I mean, I can do everything else. I just want to be able to buy the computer. No, you can't buy that. It's, it's not even available to you. So now you don't have that option. So when we say this is about giving them options, again, it's not saying go fix all your equipment by yourself tomorrow. It's making sure that when you come to that situation, you have the ability to at least make that decision. And just on this last point, a framework that I want folks to keep in mind is think about personal vehicles, automobiles. And I think Gay, who's coming behind me, will talk a little bit more about some of the history with automobiles and right to repair. But that is an area where we more or less do sort of have right to repair. And think about the options that you have. If you buy a car, you can continue to go to the dealer, the authorized, repair tech. And some people like to take their car to the dealers and like to get it fixed there. But you also can go to an independent mechanic. A lot of people do. Or if you are somebody who thinks that, that has the know-how, and that's a shrinking number of people. But if you do have the know-how and feel confident, you can also fix your car. And importantly, by and large, you can access the parts, tools, and information. Your independent mechanic can access the parts, tools, and information they need to fix that. So that's already, an area where you have vehicles that, are complex, potentially dangerous, and we trust individual consumers to be able to make that decision. Can I fix this myself? Should I bring it to an independent repair tech, or should I bring it to a dealer? So farmers who actually know this equipment much more, and I think we should extend them the same level of trust to know, is this something that I can repair myself? Is it not something that I should be repairing myself? And at least giving them that option, giving them that choice. An important other point here that you hear a lot about, an advancing an agricultural right to repair will not allow individuals to override emissions controls. This is just, I think, really critically important. Today, without right to repair being passed, it is illegal to tamper with and override emissions controls. Does it mean nobody does it? No. Obviously, people do this, but it is illegal to do it. If you pass this bill, it will still be illegal to override emissions controls. It doesn't change that in any way. And in fact, because of the way that this bill is written, and it says you cannot use any of these parts, tools, and information to override emissions controls, except to complete a repair. You can do that if you complete the repair, but you can't do it to tamper with and defeat the emissions controls. Because that's in there, and it says that you can't do that, and because this bill says anybody who violates any part of this is violating the Consumer Protection Act, you're actually enhancing enforcement of this. Because right now this is governed by the Clean Air Act, the EPA enforces this. But under this bill, if people use this to tamper with emissions controls, technically the Attorney General could find that person in violation of the Consumer Protection Act and enforce that. So you're actually potentially enhancing that.
So do you know of any rules or regs that the manufacturers or the feds have done to disallow a manufacturer from taking that piece of equipment in trade?
Yeah, I believe that is right. So if somebody has tampered with something and somebody's trying to trade that in, I believe that is part of either the Clean Air Act or there are other federal regulations that say,
I know
yeah, you can.
trucks, big trucks,
Yes.
dealers won't take them.
Yes, I believe that is also the case with agricultural equipment. 6APL, yeah. The third part here is right to repair can actually enhance repair safety. Now, bring this up, and you heard this earlier. Everything that you heard earlier is absolutely true. Complicated pieces of equipment. There are certain things where you literally have to have training. You can't, do some of this work, without this training. That again does not change under this bill. This bill is not saying you can circumvent other regulations or other laws and do things that it's just saying that you have access to the parts, tools, and information. So like I said, farmers, loggers are already aware of, what, regulations there. I mean, you heard, what there are with regards to working with chemicals and all that sort of stuff. They still would need to adhere to any and all of that. I think that there's probably some education that would come with this bill saying, listen, we're saying right to repair. That doesn't mean don't read your warranties. That doesn't mean don't adhere to and look at these standards. We're saying that you're gonna have access to these, the parts, tools, and information, but not that anything else here doesn't apply. And the reason why I say it can actually enhance repair safety is this. Remember that quote from the Colorado legislator. So right now, if you're a farmer and you're in a bind and you feel like you need to repair something and you are solely relying on an authorized repair tech, and they say they can't get to you for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we are hearing from, or at least that legislator is hearing from farmers who are saying like, well, because I can't get access to the legitimate repair materials, the stuff from the manufacturer, I'm going to go to Russian software, third-party software. So we are forcing them to make the decision between, well, I can't get either being down for 2 weeks or relying on this third-party software, pirated software, and that sort of thing. So if they're going to make that decision to repair it themselves, at the very least, we want them to have access to the legitimate manufacturer provided materials, all of the information and all that stuff, instead of putting them in this bind where they may need to rely on who knows what, So that's why we actually think right to repair can actually enhance repair safety. Does not mean it should not come with consumer education, making sure that folks understand what this does or doesn't mean in terms of like what you should be repairing. Another important point here is that farmers and loggers and independent repair technicians do not currently have access to all the tools and information they need. Again, what do I mean by this? Depending on how much more testimony and the taking and hearing, and I understand this bill doesn't need to meet crossover, so might be more time down the road. But you may hear at some point that well, farmers and loggers and independent repair techs, they already have access to like 95%, 98% of the parts and tools and information. That may or may not be true. I mean, from what again we've heard in testimony, you understand. A lot of this is available, particularly with parts. It's not like, you call the, parts department and say, I want to get this, and they're just telling you, no parts are available. You can get a lot of the stuff that you need to make repairs. But this is an area, right, to repair, where there is a big difference between 98% and 100%. And here's what I mean by that. Even if you can get all of those parts, a bunch of different tools, maybe a bunch of diagnostic maybe not diagnostic, but I guess documentation, and you can complete 98% of the repair. But the manufacturer is withholding the 2%, that key computer that allows you to plug in and tell the machine these repairs have been made. The other 98% doesn't matter because you can't finish making the repair. So it's really, this is a situation where all or nothing is the difference, because if you don't have access to everything, you can't finish the repair. So that's really important, and particularly in the area of agriculture, we do kind of understand this to be true. I mean, I know the way the bill is written, and it needs to be written this way so you don't have loopholes. It says all parts, tools, information needs to be available, but it's really select important tools that are being withheld that allow farmers, independent repair techs to finish off these repairs. And then this is a big question. The memorandum of understanding, or memoranda of understanding, I guess there's technically multiple ones now at this point. And it is our position that it's not enough. And this is, kind of either you think this or you don't. But let me, explain a little bit more, kind of our position on this. So there's this MOU, and I would actually start by saying the existence of the MOU is in some ways an argument for this law. Because the MOU, at this point now, the manufacturers and the Farm Bureau are saying this is a problem. They put to paper basically, and it's not identical, but what the MOU contains and what this bill contains is very, very similar. It's basically the same sort of premise. The only difference, and it's a very key difference, is if a party breaks the MOU, if somebody doesn't live up to it, nothing happens. There are no consequences. I mean, yes, the Farm Bureau and the manufacturers can try to work it out, fix things, and maybe that does or doesn't happen. But if it doesn't get fixed, then the farmer is still left with no recourse. They can't go to anyone. So what you are essentially saying in this bill is, we think that all makes sense, and we want to put Vermont's stamp behind this. So that way, if a farmer runs into this issue, they go, to the manufacturer, they say, hey, you're supposed to do this under the MOU. And the manufacturer says, nah, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to live up to it. Then, at least in the state of Vermont, they have the option of going to the Attorney General and saying, listen, they said they were going to live up to this. They didn't live up to this. And you are giving them that ability. Because the MOU, it lacks enforcement. A couple other points about the MOUs too. It doesn't cover 100% of manufacturers. I think they've said now it's about 2/3. I'm sure they're working on trying to get it to 100%, but it's not 100% right now. So if you have equipment that's not covered by the MOUs, you have nothing. You have no protections right now. And either party can leave it at any time. So that's the position there. We think it makes sense for the state of Vermont to put their stamp behind this to say, hey, farmers, loggers, we have your back. If you run into this, here's somewhere where you can go. And that's why we think right to repair for agricultural and forestry equipment is a good idea. So I will leave it at that. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Please do support this bill. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Yep. I was under the impression that these farmers and loggers could already buy the diagnostic equipment.
Good question. So, and I would encourage you, I'm sure you will, it's hard to, they are very, very busy. Please talk to some of the farmers and loggers, the ones who came in and spoke to the house. They can really tell you the on the ground. So I don't want to, sort of speak out of turn on what is specifically is available. The one thing that I do know, particularly with John Deere, and this is probably true across maybe some other manufacturers, but I don't know for sure. There's this very specific tool, it's called Service Advisor. What is available that you can buy is it's called Customer Service Advisor. It is a computer, has software on it that does like this diagnostics. It is different than the exact same tool, and I forget the name of it, it might be Pro Service Advisor or something that they provide to their authorized repair techs. Similar in a lot of ways, but US PERG, they ran tests on the two different pieces of equipment, the one that's available to the public, to farmers, the one that's available to service advisors. The public version is a redacted version. It can do, again, this is the difference between 98% and 100%. It can do some of the diagnostics, it can do some of the recess, but it is redacted, it is limited, it is not the same tool. So it is available, it is not fully available. And that's just one example. So like I said, it'd be important to talk to the individual farmers and loggers. They can tell you, who have tried to buy these tools and understand, the difference between the two.
Yep, questions? No, Brian?
Yeah, I think heard testimony that it's more like almost 3/4 of the manufacturers have entered into this
Mhm.
agreement. And normally what we do here is if we see a potential problem or issue, we try to structure a bill or some sort of resolution to that. I'm still not convinced there's a problem. We have at least testimony from the Vermont Farm Bureau that we haven't had any complaints. So that's where I am on this.
Yeah, that's fair. And like I said, I think I would try to hear and see if there are, farmers who are saying, we've tried to work through the MOU and it's not working for us. But even if you don't necessarily hear of a problem yet, and at the end of the day, may ultimately disagree, and that's totally fine. I would say this is a case where the MOU is only working until it isn't. And what do I mean by that? Is so you say, we're not necessarily hearing problems, but the first time that a farmer here in Vermont goes to try and avail themselves of a piece of equipment, and they find that they can't actually get what they want, and they say, oh wow, the MOU is not working. Maybe they go to the Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau tries to negotiate, and they get back and they say, manufacturer X. I won't say specific manufacturer. They said no, they're not going to provide you this. So then the farmer says, well, what do I do now? Well, you have the opportunity to say here in law, well, hey, we think the MOU is a good idea, but we're gonna, at least give the Attorney General enforcement authority here. So then, anticipating that future thing, you're saying, well, then we're at least giving that farmer, once it stops working, we put something in place where that farmer now, at least, the Farm Bureau can say, well, you know what, you can go to the Attorney General. And that's another important thing to mention here. It's not as if, you enact this and, the next day people are demanding all these parts from, manufacturers and then trying to sue them. This notably does not include a private right of action. Like the way this would play out for a manufacturer, a farmer would try to do what we just said. They would maybe try to work through, the Farm Bureau and the MOU. And if and only if they don't actually get their problem fixed, then they would go to the Attorney General. The Attorney General would then need to investigate and make sure that the manufacturer was not actually living up to that expectation. And then, if and only then, there would be enforcement brought against the manufacturer. So there's, sort of a long period of time to make it right and make it fixed. You'd only be enforcing it if somebody's saying, no, you can't have these parts, tools, and information, right? So that's kind of practically how this might play out. But I hear what you're saying, though.
Thank you. Yeah, and the other question that's come up is reasonable cost. And how do you determine if the manufacturer will sell these?
Yeah.
How do you determine what's a reasonable price?
Yeah, so reasonable is, a term of art that's in legislation. I'm, really glad that you brought this up with this question, because one thing that is distinct about the Vermont bill and how it ended up passing the House, and they changed some stuff around in House Commerce. When we entered into this, and I don't want to speak for the dealers, I'm sure you'll hear from them, but at least how I heard it characterized, some of the concerns or objections that had come up was, well, the way that it was originally worded, it made it seem like farmers, loggers could demand directly from the manufacturers at, essentially wholesale price, like these parts, tools, and information, cutting out, potentially the dealers who sell a lot of these parts, and that's an important part of their business model. And the House changed language, and I don't have the bill now in front of me. There's an important part in there where it says the manufacturer can satisfy this requirement by making these parts available through the dealers. So, and I'll talk, a second about the cost and that, kind of aspect of it. So that's important though that they changed that to put that in there, because what that means is farmer wants to get access to, part, they can call up the manufacturer and say, hey, under right to repair, I need to provide this. The manufacturer is able to say, yeah, you can get it, but you have to go buy it from the dealer in Williston. What they can't say is, no, that part is not available at all. And, I just want to be, clear. Our goal here has never been, to get these parts, tools, and information into people's hands for free. It's to make sure that they are available. So where cost comes in and why there is language about cost in there, and you can, take a closer look at it. Again, the goal is not for it to be free. It's not for it to even be the cheapest it possibly can be. The dealer, whoever's selling these, should be able to both, recoup and even potentially make a profit on this. The only reason to include anything around cost is to make sure that whoever is providing this is not using cost as a way to de facto make it unavailable. So if you don't put in something that says cost has to be reasonable and or it cannot be an impediment, then they could say, yeah, that computer, it's available, you can buy it, it's $2 million. Well, now, yeah, they've lived up to it, but they the cost is at such a point that it is making it de facto unavailable. It's unreasonable. So that's why to put anything about cost in there. You may you just heard a little bit of testimony about that particular section in that language. You might want to look at that language and massage it, but that's why we think that that's kind of an important part.
Yep. Anything else? Well, thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.
Gay is, Gay.
Yep, I'm coming on. There you are.
Yeah.
Oh.
Morning.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. I would love to have been there in person. Been to Montpelier a number of times on a variety of bills. And I just want to provide some background. The kind of our origin story for the Digital Right to Repair Coalition is based on the Massachusetts law for automobiles, right to repair for automobiles. It was done in 2012. And at that point, we didn't know how we were going to address the problem of monopolized repair, but we saw that bill and said, wow, this would be perfect if it didn't say automobiles. And so we literally just took out the word automobiles and inserted the word digital electronic part or product. And that's the bill. It hasn't really changed very much since 2012. That auto law works. It's working less and less because the MOU that was created in 2014 for both cars and over-the-road trucks, it didn't include electric vehicles. And the manufacturers of those vehicles, some big names like Tesla, aren't involved, are completely not involved in that MOU. So if you have the misfortune to own a Tesla, you're not getting it fixed without Tesla. So the fair and reasonable language that you see before you was in the Massachusetts law. It has been taken through a number of state legislatures. We've had bills now in 47 out of 50 states. So it has been very widely scrutinized, very widely kicked around. We've had countless discussions with council, with manufacturers, with trade associations, and the fair and reasonable language has not been an issue because, as Zach said, it was created with the intent of allowing the dealerships to make money. The original language was a little crude, and it has been probably the last 6 years, has always included that option because everybody relies on their dealers. They know that the dealer is an important partner, particularly in agriculture and forestry. So that is not there. The fair and reasonable, we talked about that. The tools and documentation, if you don't have the tools and you don't have the documentation, you really can't make a complete repair any longer. And the reason is the electronics in the tractor or the whatever thing, the electronics are not the same thing as your old mechanical tools. They are complex, but that doesn't mean they're not repairable. Basically what happens is something goes wrong with one of the pieces of electronics. Let's say it overheats and something fries. I mean, literally fries. The only way to fix it is to replace the part. And if the manufacturer creates difficulties with replacing the part, then you cannot make a complete repair. And the way the way the industry has gone in the past 10 years is that blessing of that part can only happen from the dealership. And that's where things go horribly wrong because there's no alternatives to the dealership. As several people have said, if the dealership doesn't have a technician available and you're in the middle of doing something, you're going to wait till that technician can show up. And that could be 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks. Nobody knows. And I think we've also had the situation arise where there is, in fact, a technician shortage. So there's not enough technicians to go around to do the work. So the timeliness of the repair is really linked to the availability of all the tools that the dealership is currently only able to get. So it's an exclusive relationship. not a technical one. And to the points where, so I would say, and we've been at this for a long time, there is no free market for repair right now. And it's only starting to return to a free market because of the legislation that has been passed. It's very early to tell what actually is being done, who's in compliance, who's not in compliance. We don't know yet. We will know that probably more over the next 6 months as people start to call their dealers and say, I need this and I'm going to fix it myself and find out what happens. Couple other things that I think was brought up. Oh, federal. We are not against federal legislation. We're just very practical people. And we see that federal government isn't doing very much of anything effectively. And to rely on the federal government to do something that is well within the constitutional purview of the states, because states control general business law. And this bill is directed at general business law, and particularly statutes against unfair and deceptive acts and practices. So it fits really well with state legislation. And that has been proven, not just with the auto industry, but also now in multiple states that have advanced these bills. I've personally been to Congress. I've been asked to testify on a bunch of things. We've all been very engaged with the Federal Trade Commission and the U.S. Copyright Office. And even the Federal Trade Commission took a look at the options that might help create a right to repair nationally. And they even said the state option, even though they don't love it, is the best option because it is able to do these things through state law. The problems with copyright law, there are some. They can't be fixed by states. We don't attempt to do anything with copyright law, trade secret law, or patent law. So if anybody is worried about losing their copyrights, they should fear not, because it's not in the bill. Can't be in the bill. What else? Oh, dangerous stuff. Well, I own a small tractor, and I've already discovered it's dangerous. I slide around in the snow and I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like this. It's dangerous. But I'm also very cautious. And that's my job to protect me. I don't find that the DEF argument makes a lot of sense because I have a car, it's a diesel, and it takes DEF. And I was never told I needed training to pour a quart of DEF into my engine. So that may be a little bit overblown. But in any way, those Tier 4 requirements, they are controlled federally. They are whatever it is that they are. And there's nothing in this bill that says anything about that changes. In fact, I believe there's even a statement in there we put in at the request of some of the opposition was that this bill does not give you the right to modify things on your computer. Well, it's computer in a tractor, but there's no right to modify. There's no changes to federal law. There's no changes to safety law. There's no mandated requirements that manufacturers create any new product. There's no mandates at all. Fair and reasonable is there to make sure that it's at least a floor. A farmer can at least have some expectation of being treated fairly. I've probably gone on too long. One more point, because I was taking notes. Yeah, we know the Farm Bureau has entered into an MOU, but I've been working with the Farm Bureau personally since 2014, and they were for many years supportive of right to repair in states. One of our most successful bills in New York State was done with the help of the New York State Farm Bureau. And largely because their membership, which is probably really similar to Vermont, are very small farms, primarily dairy. And they needed help getting access to the repair materials that they needed from manufacturers that may or may not even be selling that equipment. I have some pictures that a friend sent me of some really cool stuff in the dairy industry, a dairy robot that runs around and scoops up poop. I mean, is that covered by right to repair? Certainly not by the MOU. So I have some questions about whether or not the MOU covers enough products. It's my opinion that the MOU has been done with primarily the very large combine tractor industry. It is not directed at small farms. It's not directed at dairy. And, so, okay, 70% of the 70% of the big combines are covered by right to repair, but how many of those are in Vermont? I suggest very, very few, because I can't see a place where there's even a field large enough to be able to really run one of those things. So that's, I can tell you what's going on in other states. I can tell you what's going on federally. Questions?
Yeah, and, so, Gay, in Massachusetts, your law is for cars? Basically for automobiles?
Yeah, that's the only one that's in effect is automobiles.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that one, by the way. That was the auto industry that did that. We've since discovered that our interests are very much converged, but they're still trying to fight for auto right to repair. They just did a successful ballot initiative in Maine for automotive right to repair in Maine. And they've tried repeatedly in Congress to try to get something going, and they're finding the same problems that we are, is that Congress is too busy doing other things.
Yeah. Any questions?
No other questions. Thank you. That's all.
So thank you, Gay, for being with us this morning. Appreciate it.
Well,
Thank
thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll make sure somebody gets back to you.
Okey-doke. So the next, Grace.
That's me.
Yep.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm Grace Odell. I'm the Executive Director of the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont. We represent close to 800 certified farms and 1,300 members around the state. And I'm glad to be following in after so much testimony and support of House Bill 81. We believe that farmers and loggers should have the right to repair their own equipment or otherwise have access to affordable, accessible, convenient repairs, whether that's through a dealer or a local independent repair shop, part of the texture of our rural community. Requiring farmers and loggers to go to the dealer for repairs, as you already heard, is much more costly, which is one of our members' core concerns. And I encourage you to reach out and hear from farmers and loggers on this if you haven't already reached out. Having to wait many days for an authorized repair person to come in when you're in the middle of a major task on a farm or woodlot can sometimes cause significant loss of income. And it does not create a robust competitive market for diagnostics parts and services that benefit farmers, loggers, and supports rural economies. Instead, it leads to monopoly and the hollowing out of our small towns, which benefits no one but consolidated dealerships themselves. Ensuring farmers and loggers' right to repair their equipment aligns with Vermont's culture that values self-sufficiency and practicality. We know that some of our farmers are using older equipment that they can still repair themselves or have repaired by a local shop, and those farmers may not be currently as directly impacted by the issue, and that's some of what we were hearing. We haven't heard a ton about this. As those machines finally phase out and we bring in new modern equipment, which is becoming increasingly computerized, as we already heard. I loved hearing that testimony from the young person about their work on computers. The equipment that our farmers are buying, even used, is going to be relying on these computer-based diagnostics where you can encounter these blocks that do nothing except make it impossible for you to work on it yourself. Without this bill, independent repair providers will struggle to stay in business as the industry really shifts towards these computerized systems, which is going to further exacerbate monopoly conditions in the industry. In the long run, we believe that for farmers and loggers to have easy, affordable access to repair is a good thing for equipment manufacturers, in addition to being good for work-intensive businesses. Because if farmers and loggers know that a product is reliable and affordable to work on in the long term, they're more likely to purchase that product, new or used. A product that can be easily and affordably repaired is attractive both to the farmer buying new. It's more attractive for a farmer looking to buy it secondhand because they can know that they can still fix it affordably even once the product is out of warranty. Forcing farmers into a situation where they must go through the dealer might have benefits to the manufacturer in the short term, but in the long term, it's a short-sighted business model that will make this product less attractive. We also believe this bill is consistent with other bills being taken up in other states, as we've already heard. Given the broad scope of this issue, there has been national attention, as demonstrated by the Farm Bureau's MOU with John Deere, that has led to bills in multiple states with the same or similar requirements embedded. We strongly believe that legislation is a much better solution to the issue facing farmers and coming down the line, to your point, than the current MOU with John Deere. While the MOU is clearly an acknowledgement that it's a problem, it doesn't contain sufficient enforcement mechanisms, it doesn't guarantee affordability, and it doesn't include parts for forestry equipment. In sum, we're very supportive of the legislature passing H81 to ensure affordable, convenient access to repairs for ag and forestry equipment, and we encourage you to hear directly from farmers and loggers affected by this issue. Kept it great?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is something that our farmers are reaching out to us about, and they feel strongly and they're watching the issue, even though we haven't heard that they've been running into the problems because they anticipate that coming.
So you have been hearing from,
We've been hearing from members on this issue. Yeah, we have a policy committee. So we are run and governed by a farmer board, and we have farmer committees that inform the work that we do. And this is of really core interest to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
questions.
It's really nice to come at this part of the stack because all the points are just like as per the earlier comment.
Yeah,
Anything else?
no questions?
No, I don't think so.
And,
So you're not hearing, so you're hearing support for the bill, but you're not hearing concerns, complaints that the MOU isn't working.
Not that I think what we just heard about a lot of the machines that our farmers use might not even be those which are addressed in the MOU.
Okay.
So they're not bumping into things
Into those
yet.
things, yeah. Okay.
And as we're going through a generational farm transfer right now, and a lot of folks are looking at new equipment in this moment, we know that there's gonna be a changing set of circumstances over the next 10 years. And so this is a good preventative hedge against encountering, a problem and then having to start this effort from the ground up.
yeah, see, I don't know if small, 50 horsepower tractors are involved in all this afterburner and diagnostic stuff or not. So we have, right?
Yep, thanks, Mr. Chair. So let me just offer another view of this, which I haven't heard anybody else mention. In my world, I think manufacturers could be viewed more positively by consumers if they were involved in the MOU. In other words, word gets around on the farms, well, you should deal with this company or that company or this company because there is an existing MOU. And I think that might put them in a more favorable position with a consumer who has a choice to make it. Who should I buy whatever from? So if John Deere is involved in the MOU, that could actually be a positive thing for additional business if one farmer is talking to another farmer. So I haven't heard anybody mention that, but to me, that's a pretty strong argument for letting the MOU just stay in place. And I assume there are people adding to it all the time. We didn't have all of the 70% that are in it now at the beginning. So it's just, I think, another sort of aspect to think about. The reputation of the manufacturers that already have an existing relationship because of the MOU with their customers, I think that's a positive thing. Just offering that, not necessarily hoping for a response, but.
No, I think it could be, and I think that as we've already heard, like there isn't an issue until there's an issue, and then if there's no mechanism to take action in place, this is just a fence around fencing, right? So it's an extra level of protection that a farmer would have in the event that they went to the MOU and tried to get their problem fixed. And we're concerned with timeliness and farmers being able to continue their work in the field. And so it's just simply like, these are scrappy people, they're used to solving problems. They'll probably go to the path where they can get traction. And if they can, but there's not going to be an issue if it's possible.
Yeah.
But I think it doesn't do harm.
Irene,
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. You have 30 seconds to tell us about your conference coming up and how legislators might access
I
it.
sure do. We're having our conference, we think it may be the largest conference in the state. We generally have over 1,000 people in the Davis Center this weekend. And yes, we have folks coming from the state. We are going to hear from Reginaldo Hadlet-Marroquin, who runs really large scale silvopasture and chicken operations in the Midwest. And hearing about this kind of perennial system for farming he's gonna be keynoting. So we're super excited. We are having our federal delegation staff team attend, and if any of you are interested in attending, we would love to have you at the conference.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also delicious food, a huge cheese table. I mean, best of Vermont products.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you. Sorry.
All set?
That's
No,
great.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I don't believe there are any other witnesses. Linda, do you have anyone else?
No.
Calvin? No. So, want to thank Zach and you folks, that did come in. And we have a joint assembly at 10:30.
Yes.
We're supposed to be at 10:15.
10:15.
Oh,
We're supposed to be in there at 10:15.
In the house.
No,
We're supposed to be on the floor at
Yeah,
10:15.
so we'll